Hey guys, welcome back. It is your favorite Gimp with a Limp, and I am here with a little more Assault Red Horizon 41. Don't worry, I do have some more 1985 Sacred Oil coming for you. Unfortunately, I'm still in a little bit of pain, and I have to do something that doesn't require me to move very much, and I'm on a little bit of a time crunch with this one anyway. So this will work. We're going to jump right back into this. Now, this first video is going to be a setup one. And normally I don't focus too much on setup, especially with tactical games like this. But this has to do with one of the key elements of something that I like about this game. So we're going to play it. We're going to do all that. This first video is just going to be a little bit shorter, showing you this formation card aspect that I like, because it does take a little bit more time. You don't just have the order of battle in your scenario booklet telling you you're going to have exactly these units and the bag is going to have exactly these units. It's not like that. It's a little bit different, and that's what I like. Now, I couldn't find a real scenario that worked for me, so I just created my own. Found a couple of map pieces that I liked. We're going to have the Soviets set up on this left side, a couple of hexes in. Germans set up on this side, a couple of hexes in. Have them fight over the center and just see what happens. Now, when you're setting up your scenario, it'll tell you how many of each type of card that we have. I decided to try to keep the scope down just a little bit since I'm only using 2 map tiles. So I left out the artillery formations. We've got tank formations and infantry formations for both sides. So just to make sure you guys understand what I'm talking about, this is just one of the scenarios that's in the booklet. And you see it shows your starting formations and it lists down how many of each one of those cards you're going to have. So like the Germans in this one have 2 infantry and 1 artillery, but the Russians have 3 tank formations and 1 infantry. So it's asymmetrical. I really love that when they have asymmetrical stuff going on in the game. And you see it's got, cool little setup thing. But when it's talking about those numbers, that means that the Soviets in this example would draw 3 of these tank cards and 1 of their infantry cards. The Germans would draw 2 infantry and 1 artillery, and those are the units they would have for order of battle. Now, you can do it in such a way that if you just want to pick your cards, just pick from the available cards, you and your opponent, or if you're playing it by yourself, that's fine. You're fully able to do that. But this is the aspect that really gives a lot of that replayability, I think, to the game, and the fact that there are a good stack of cards. These are just the Soviet tank formation cards. You see how many there are here, and it's about that many for the infantry and the artillery, same for the Germans. So with this many, if you're only drawing a couple of these, right? Here's a couple, here's a couple, here's a couple, just like that, you can have multiple games of the same scenario with same objective, but have each one of them play out different because you're going to have different types of units, different formations get involved into the game. So I figured I'd let that play out here. We're going to draw a card for each one of these. We're just going to have 1 tank, 1 infantry for each side, and we're going to let that determine what our units are going to be. So for our Soviet tanks, we're going to have the 23rd Tank Brigade. Now, this is something that I am going to ignore when it comes to optional rules. Most of the optional rules I'm going to leave in, but I am going to ignore the experience, which is what that little circle there means, right? And it's just an extra layer that I don't want to worry about during this aspect of gameplay. Just understand that you can have experienced units or green units. It will make them either weaker or tougher in combat. We're not going to worry about that for this example of play. Now, our key things is this card shows us that we're going to have 2 of the T-30. Ooh, 2 T-35s. Nice. And 1 cavalry squad. Kind of would have liked to have more tanks, but a couple of tanks is good. Key thing down here in the bottom, you see those 2 circles. Those are our command points. So we have 3. Oh, sorry, didn't mean to bump the camera. 3 units. 3 individual units, but 2 command points. That means we can only activate 2 out of the 3 of these each game. Now, you don't have to play with command points. That is one of the optional rules, but it's an optional rule that I like. So depending on what cards you get, that's how many of these tokens that you have. and you have to place them out before the round starts and flip over the units. And we'll let you see that when we start setting up. But that's what we're going to have for our Soviet tanks. Let's see what we got for Soviet infantry. It looks like a basic squad, and this actually kind of sucks that I'm not using the experience level. Blanked out there for a second because these guys are elites, the highest level. Just an NKVD platoon. There are 4 squads, a sniper, and a machine gun. So, yeah, relatively basic. But just so you guys can kind of see how things change up here, looking at the Soviet tanks, this has 1 BA-10 and a couple of T-26. Now, remember, this is 41, so it's going to have earlier war vehicles. 2K, oh, that would have been a good one. 2 KV-2s, which are 1940s. And this actually has an extra rifles. So some of the units are mixed in there. There are some artillery pieces that are in the infantry stack and some infantry that are in the vehicle stack. You're going to have the option to have a little bit of everything in there, but mainly it's going to be these types of units. This has 2 KV-1s and a BA-10, a couple of T-34s, T-60, another couple of T-34s with a BT-7, which I think is one of those real small light tanks, 3 BT-10s and a BT-7, so more tanks, but lighter ones, T-35, 2 T-26, and a BA-10, BT-7, T-60, and rifles, and BT-7 and T-60, and then varying amounts. So you guys can see right there, that's what I'm talking about that I like, that randomly drawing these cards, you will have each scenario play out differently, even if you just play the same scenario time and time again, because you're going to draw different cards. And let you see some of the infantry. Like these guys, they've got rifle platoons, mortars, machine gun, anti-tank rifles, cavalry, anti-tank rifle, machine gun, and a truck. Let's see, anti-tank rifle, trucks. But this one has a whole lot of command points. That's 7 command points, which means there should be, ooh, that's a lot. That's 8, 9, 10, 11 units. Ooh, motorized unit there. And snipers, trucks, heavy rifles, mortars, machine guns, snipers. Like this one, okay. This one's got a 76 mil anti-tank weapon included with it. And a bunch of machine guns, trucks, a lot of cavalry. And that one, another anti-tank rifle and some infantry. So you can see there's a lot of variation to all of this. Looks like an anti-air weapon even included in that one. And this one's got 2. This is a support gun section that has 3 anti-tank weapons and 1 actual squad of what you would call infantry and a mortar, right? That's the infantry. So you could pull that and go, okay, well, now I've got to make a defensive line because I'm not going to have infantry for a whole lot of pushing. So I've got to figure out how I can, get some open sight lines and shoot my enemy from a distance. Let's draw these German ones, see what they're going to have. We are going to have for their infantry just 5 normal rifles, tank hunters, 41. I'm guessing some type of Panzerfaust using unit. Heavy machine gun and an 81 mil mortar and a bunch of command tokens. These guys, since they don't have any marker up there, would just be regular. We're going to treat them all as regular for our gameplay purposes though. And for tanks, they're going to have 2 Panzer IV F1s and a Panzer 38T. 3 separate units, but only, again, a couple of command points. So that's actually works out fairly nice. It's similar to what the Soviets have. So now we've got it figured out what we're going to have. Let's grab this. Okay, and now you can see I have it all laid out, what we're going to have. So these are the specific unit cards that correlate to each one of these. Now, something you can do if you want is each one of these cards in the upper left corner has a point value in it, and that has to do with how many points that unit is going to be worth. You can try to balance out a little bit if you want. You don't have to. We're not going to worry about it for our purposes. We're just going to play the game and have fun with it and see who does well with what. just randomly being drawn. But again, actually, we showed the T-35 a lot. We've got our cavalry here. You can see they don't have real crap going on for anti-tank weapons, but they can do pretty well, and they move pretty quick for a infantry type unit. And most of them are going to have 4 damage points worth. Oh, and I should mention this, that the German cards and the Soviet cards are backwards from each other. So they each face in opposite directions. So what's going to be the point values on one card in the upper left is going to be the point values in the upper right on the Soviet cards. So make sure you keep that in mind. I don't want you to look at their movement values and go, wow, their movement is real good or real bad. When we're looking at these guys, though, our machine guns, we can see that they do not have a whole lot of damage points. They're effectively what we'd be used to with most of our tactical games with their counters. They take a damage, flip them, and then take another damage. They're pretty well gone, but good ranged damage. Not a whole lot of movement value, though. Not a whole lot of movement value for most of these guys. Actually, I would figure the cavalry would move faster than that. And you can actually see for our snipers, same thing. They've got good range damage, but they're not going to move too quick. And we've got our infantry squads here. Not too far range, but, decent damage. German mortars, they do have the indirect fire. They can lay smoke, all that good stuff. And you see that S symbol. That S symbol means they're going to come into play during that support section of the game. Has to do with your artillery type weapons. Not a whole lot of those on here since I didn't draw from the artillery deck. I think mortars are going to be the only thing we're going to run into that are going to have that. So these guys are going to be the only ones who can actually do a lot of cool stuff during that. But if we activate our mortars during that support phase, they don't get to activate during the normal phase, the action phase. And it looks like the Germans, will have a little bit of easier time. I think these Panzer IVs are a fair bit better than those T-35s. A little bit better armor, especially on the front and the sides. See the rear. Yeah, rear's better too. And better range damage. Little fewer dice being thrown, but better dice being thrown is what it looks like. Because remember, with this game, it comes down to the dice having their values. Red being the strongest, then yellow, then green, then blue when it comes to how strong they are. All right, so our Soviet forces here, we have a total of, let me make sure I'm looking at it right, 7 command points. And it looks like the Germans have 8, if I'm not counting that wrong. Yep, they're going to have 8 command points. Now, they have multiples of some of the same ones, like the infantry here. See where they at. They're going to have a stack of 4 counters. All right, so these are all the NKVD, the infantry squad, political commissary guys, right? But we've only got 1 infantry card. When it comes to playing the game, I'm going to have the command points assigned to that card, and I can assign up to 4, 1 for each one of the units, right? So basically, if you want to activate more than 1 of a specific type, you don't need, and they don't include, there's only 1 unit card per each unit in the game. You just put those extra command points right there on the card to signify the fact that you're activating another of that type of unit. And voila, just like that, we've got our units signed out and put onto the board. There are a lot of them, and since I only allowed them to go a couple of hexes in on each side, they're pretty well lined up right there on the front, getting ready to go hardcore at each other. But I got some ideas. Basically, the panzers try to gain control over the center, keep some lines of sight blocked with these buildings over here, so they can try to kind of focus down some of the Soviet forces. The infantry try to push in, gain control maybe of the center there, see if they can keep control of it. The mortar, they're interesting. They don't have to have direct line of sight. They can do indirect fire, and their line of sight can be traced by units that are adjacent to them. But I think that's only infantry and artillery pieces. So like infantry that's adjacent to them can be like their spotter, right? Effectively how that's going to work. And there is spotting in this game, which you guys will see how that's going to play out. It does take a fair amount of space, though. You have to keep that in mind. You guys can see some of it. Some of it's bleeding off camera just because how wide it is. Because remember, for each one of the different types of units that are on the board, you're going to have one of these unit cards out. That way you can apply the command tokens to them if you're using that rule. And also, there's no way you can have all these stats memorized. That is a drawback to the game. The counters look better because they don't have a whole lot of numbers and jumble blah 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 all over them, but all of that's been transferred to the cards, so you can't just be focused on what's on the map. You're going to be referring to the cards a lot. That's something you're going to have to keep in mind if that's something that could bother you. For me, I'm okay with it. My eyesight's given in my older years. I'm always having to lean down and eyeball the counters anyway, so looking at a card versus looking at a counter is not that, big of a damn difference to me. I'll tell you what, though, I'm looking forward to trying it. I'm really hoping this plays well as I'm expecting from how it looks, because I'm already getting ideas of maybe using the mortars to pop some smoke out here to cover the advance of the German units as they're pushing forward. But that's also going to block their view of the Soviet units as they push forward. And the Soviets do have some good spots here. There's building here that's a couple of hexes that if they get their units up into it, it's going to give them some nice clear lines of sight out into those German forces. But the German forces do have numerical superiority and better tanks on the field, so it might lean in their direction. It's their war to lose. All right, so I know I've started this one a little bit slower, but I did want to show you guys that bit of setup and how that's going to work, because I think that is one of the strengths of this game. So I wanted to make sure I showed it to you in action. I really do like the formation cards. I like the command points and how they're going to work. Now, you guys will see this when we start playing, but all the command points that you're supposed to use are supposed to be set out before the turn. So like we've got 7 of these on the Soviet side. I'm supposed to place all 7 out on the cards before the round starts. I think that's something that might be able to be house ruled for playing solitaire. Instead of placing them all out there at the beginning, you might, just place one at a time as you use them. Because in this, it's not all one side go, all the other side go. During the action phase, one side will spend one of its command points to activate a unit and do its stuff. And then the other side will spend its command point to activate its unit to do its stuff. Goes back and forth until each side effectively passes. That's something that I could see maybe potentially being altered a little bit just for solitaire purposes. But we're going to try it out exactly as it's listed down in the rule book to start out and just see how well that plays out. But you guys let me know your thoughts down below, what you're thinking so far of all these cool components. I gotta say, really nice components. It looks good on the board, and I am really looking forward to trying it. All right, you guys take care. I will see you in the next one.